And we are back on the podcast. Gabe Yanez and I, we are joined by Dan Bailey today. If you've been in the cross space, you definitely know who Dan is. He's the man behind the Iron Triathlon. Him and I did that. He's a CrossFit Games competitor, but most importantly, he's been married, but he just had twins. Like I'm talking like 2-3 weeks ago, he just had twins. And so we dive in today on all things being a dad, where his life is at, his training, and of course, with touch base on some lessons learned from track and field. I love Dan Bailey, Gabe, and I really enjoyed this conversation.
Dude, it was so much fun. I can't imagine going from 0 to 2. I brought this up on the show, but you know, there's kind of the funny back and forth about like what transition's more difficult, going from 0 kids to 1 or 1 to 2. Me and Ariel joke around about it all the time, but going from 0 to 2, man, that's got to be something. But I really appreciated more than anything his like enthusiasm and like you mentioned on the show, like the glow that he has despite literally being in the throes of, you know, having these 2 kids. And I think that his mindset on being a dad was super refreshing to hear. So I love the episode. I know people will as well.
Yeah. And as per usual, you know, guys, if you've been listening to podcasts for a while, we just want to express our gratitude. We've been putting a lot of effort into getting great guests on. We're going to have more amazing guests, right? But if you do get value from the show, it means a lot to us if you could leave us a rating and review. In particular, on Apple, we could actually see it. But if you leave it on Spotify, leave it wherever you check this out at. But we'd really appreciate a rating and review. And if you get value out of this episode, which I'm confident you will, because Dan shares some great insight and just great gratitude, man. He's going to put you in just a really good mood. Just share the podcast with a friend. That's all we ask. And without any further ado, let's dive into a great episode with Dan Bailey, recent father of twins. Let's get it. Dan Bailey, I could be wrong, but is this the first public appearance you've made after having twins and talking about the experience?
I think so. I think this is the first one. Yeah, you get the exclusive interview.
It's the exclusive drop of Dan Bailey talking about life after having twins. Your children, how old are they now? Like maybe 2 weeks?
About 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Yeah, getting close to a month. Actually, coming up on a month, actually, because today's what, the 24th or something like that. I have no idea what day it is or what time it is. Yeah.
It's all a blur.
Yeah. It's all been one long day since they've been born. So.
Well, on behalf of myself, everybody listening, we just want to say congratulations, man. What a huge, huge deal. Gabe actually had a baby like right around the same time, but he only had one. I mean, you had twins, so it must be a whole different ball game, but we're going to dive into that today.
Yeah, let's do that.
So before we started recording, you said that last night, because you look good right now. I mean, if you're listening to this audio, Dan Bailey looks good. He's got a little scruff going on, solid hat, got a dog behind him in a painting. I'm not quite sure, but you look vibrant. And last night was tough, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there has been an easy night really to say, but yeah, it's just, they're just kind of in a phase right now where typically we were feeding about every 3 hours, just 24/7 on repeat. But they're starting to wake up a little bit earlier. Maybe one wants a little more sooner. So like maybe just 2 hours in or an hour and a half after you last fed them, one of them wants up again. And with 2, it's no joke. I mean, having children, period, is one of the most awesome and difficult things. I'm sure everybody knows who has kids, like getting through those first 6 months to that first year. But twins is not twice as hard. It's probably 10 times as hard. I mean, I can't imagine if we just had one, you know, there's not a whole lot of trade-off where one person just kind of handles the feeding and everything, because it'll probably take about an hour and a half to almost sometimes 2 hours. Like if it's just one person doing it. And even with both of us in there going like as fast as we can, trying to do everything we can, it's still an hour to an hour and a half, like to get that done. So it's just a lot. Like it's just, I mean, my wife is an absolute champ. She's crushing it. And we're just, you know, making it through. This is all we know though. This is my first experience. This is all I know for having kids. This is just what I know is it. But we kind of laugh every now and then while we're in there at 2 o'clock in the morning. Like, could you imagine if this was just one? Like, you could be sleeping right now. I could be doing this. And then you could wake up, like, we could at least get 5 hours. Like, that would be amazing. Like, 5 hours of sleep has never felt so good in my entire life. 4 to 5 hours, it's amazing. But, like, right now we're usually, like, 2.5 hours at a time is what we'll sleep pretty much all night. And maybe a nap here or there in the day if someone can squeeze one in. But All that to say, it's amazing. I wouldn't trade it for anything. Absolutely love it. And I love them.
Oh, dude, it's awesome, man. I want to hear a little bit more about when you guys found out. Like, how did that happen?
Oh, when you got the word that it was twins, Gabe?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So we knew we wanted to be married for at least a year before we had kids. We just wanted to be together. I'm married kind of late, 38. It's never too late, but a little bit later than obviously most of my friends. So we wanted to have that 1 year before we really kicked things off with having kids. And we went on a honeymoon kind of late and did that. And like, while we were on the honeymoon, like, okay, like, pull the goalie, pull all that. Let's, if we're gonna have kids, let's do it. We're ready. We'll get the honeymoon out of the way, have that fun. And then it's time to, see if we can have children. And back in my head, I'm like, all right, it might take a year, it might take, I've been around a lot of different families who it's taken a while, and like, you just have to be patient, and, you go see a doctor here and there or whatnot. And, no way, first try. Like, as soon as we got home from like the honeymoon, we found out within like the first couple weeks she was pregnant, like immediately. And then we went and had our first checkup for it. And, they're doing the ultrasound and everything and looking, and we don't really know what we're looking at on the screen. Obviously the doctor knows a little bit better of what's going on in there. And she did it in a way that gave us a little bit of panic for like 15 seconds, because she was looking and she just goes, "Oh," and just paused. And I'm like, in my head, I didn't know what she was going to say. Like, my stomach just dropped. I like grab Alex's hand. I'm like, oh my God, like, something terrible's happened, whatever. And both of us are just like holding our breath. And there's this like 5-second pause. She goes, "You're having twins." And like, then my stomach did drop. I was like, oh my gosh, like, so happy, so excited, just blown away. We laughed about it before. We were like, what if we have twins? Like, it would be cool to just knock it out right away, because we wanted two. That's what we wanted. And if we got like twins, like, that would be kind of cool to just, do it in one shot. I don't know. Is that me? My mic? You guys hearing that? Sorry.
Yeah, that. No, we're hearing you good. We feel good.
Okay. All right. I have some kind of noise coming through, but yeah, so that's kind of how we found out. And it was just like, okay, this is what we're doing. And then we wanted to find out immediately what the genders were. And so the first time we could find that out, we had them tell us. And when they told us boy, girl, we both just started crying. Like, we were so happy.
Wow.
I mean, like, I wanted to, obviously I wouldn't have mattered to me if it was whatever, girl, boy, whatever. But just for both of us, like, I know she wanted a girl and I wanted a boy, and we got both, and just couldn't be more blessed. It was perfect.
It's funny, man. Like, one of the things that you hear a lot about, or I don't know if you hear a lot about, and this is the stuff that gets pushed with the algorithm on Instagram all the time, but it's like the whole thing of like, what's the more difficult transition, 0 to 1 or 1 to 2, right? And there's like, a case to be made for both. And it's funny because like me and my wife have been having that conversation a lot, because, we're like, what was tougher, us going from like having no kids to having 1, or 1 to 2 now that we're in it? And we kind of go back and forth. Like, I think it's just so different. You can't compare. But for you, like 0 to 2, man, that's 0 to 100 for lack of a better term. But I think one thing that I'm curious kind of your thoughts on, and I know that we all kind of are on the same page. I've talked to Jason a lot about, what it feels like to be a dad. How do you put into words how something that, on the surface, you say, hey, I'm sleeping 2 hours a night. Hey, like, it's been a rough, like, how do you put into words? Because I think it's tough to do that, but any parent listening will understand. How do you explain how something as hard as having newborn twins is at the same time just so, like, can't describe how amazing it is, especially like now that, like, you're so early in it. Because I remember when we had our first, when you're at the 4-week mark, they're also not really like giving you much. Because the positive to it, like, I think like doubles once you get a smile, once you get a laugh, once you get a giggle. Then it's like, dude, I won't sleep an hour a night, but you give me a smile and it's like, whatever. But it is tough in the beginning, because like, you're literally getting nothing in return. They're just either crying or asking to eat or whatever.
Yeah. Repeat that first question again. What was
just how do you put into words how something so hard on the surface is so amazing?
Yeah, I honestly don't know how to put it into words. It's something you have to experience, and it's one of those things where I was never somebody to hold somebody's kid. I was never somebody to like, when I was around babies, I don't know what it was. It's just like I would protect a baby, anybody's baby with my life, but it's just not for me. Like, it's just not, I don't want to pick them up. I don't want to hold them. I don't know how to hold them. I feel awkward.
Right. There's like a discomfort there, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Like, and I don't know how to describe that. It's just how I was wired. And I don't know if everybody's that way or not, but like, as soon as they were here and they were in the crib, it was just like, it's like something just clicked and it was on. And I just dove right in, like had no problem changing the diapers. I wanted to pick them up and hold them. I wanted to get the swaddle perfect. And I wanted to make sure, like, anytime they were crying, it was just like, I was just invested immediately. Like, it was just like, this is my everything anymore. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't know how to explain that switch to anyone other than, if you're ever blessed enough to have kids, I hope you have that same experience, or I think that you will. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I saw you. I think you put something like that up on social, right? I think you said something like that, like that. It just was like a, you know, and I think it's normal to feel the way you did. At least for me, you know, I was the first of my friends to have kids, and I was pretty uncomfortable around kids. Like, I didn't want to like hold them and stuff. Like, now it's different, obviously, because I've had kids and whatnot, but like, I didn't really want to. And then all of a sudden when they showed up, it was like a completely different like feeling, right? It just, and it wasn't bad. Like, of course, to your point, like you would do anything for, you know, a friend's kid if you saw them in danger, but it wasn't like you were seeking out holding a baby at a party, you know? It was just different. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Hillary would give me a really hard time with that, because they'd always have whatever babies over at the house, or like there was a lot of newborns down in Cookeville, and like they'd make me like hold a baby, and it would just be so awkward. Like, I would just be like, I don't know what to do with this. Like, I don't know like how to do this. But yeah, it was like an instant change, you know, priorities.
Can I ask on that note, Dan, you know, on this show, we talked about this idea of protect and provide. It's something that, and I think this is, you kind of alluded to this, so I'm curious what your thoughts are. For Gabe and I, you know, my training went from trying to be the fittest on earth, and yours too, to now my goal as a husband, as a father, as a community member is to protect. So run, jump, climb, lift, fight if needed, but really have the fitness to do those things. And then also provide, you know, experiences, and, you know, always be able to say yes to my kids who want to go do something, like, and always have the fitness to be able to do that. Like, never, like, my workout should support that, not detract from that. I'm curious, like, now that your kids, and obviously they're brand new, but like, has there been a switch in the way that you think about training and longevity and like what your goals are there? Like the protect and provide piece, I'm curious.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I transitioned out of like competition, it changed quite a bit. Like, just the hours that I spent in the gym a day, and kind of the focus was more on health rather than necessarily performance. But now it's, you know, it's even more. It's like, you know, I definitely I don't spend as much time in the gym so I can spend more time in here, but I try to really optimize my time in the gym to do what you're saying. You know, I think about 8 years from now, when my kids are in middle school or something, and we're going out to soccer games or whatever they're playing. And I mean, I'm going to be 48, and when I'm going to be dealing with other people whose dads are like 27 or like 29 or something like that. And I want to, I mean, I don't mean this in a bad way, but I want to put them to shame, even at 48. Like, I want to be so fit.
Yeah, you do. Yeah,
like,
you do.
Them, and they're like, what does he do? Like, how is this? He's how old, and he's doing whatever. Like, I 100% am training to be that dad. Like, absolutely. And I know that I have to stay on top of my fitness, you know, if I want to have a chance of that, you know, being an older dad. I still have to prioritize it. I still have to make sure that I'm getting in there and staying healthy and staying on top of things and keeping myself injury free and all those different things. So I'm excited for that. And like you said, like, provide certain things like popped into my head. Like, when I was a kid, I had like tree houses and forts and all these things, and we have some space here at the house. So those are things that like pop into my head, all these experiences that I want them to have, you know what I mean? The same kind of things that I had, and just be able to do all those things with them, be capable to function with them outside in the physical world.
What does training look like these 3-4 weeks that you've been in it? What does that look like? Have you been prioritized getting out there at all? Are you like, hey, I'm not getting sleep, like I'm not doing anything? What does that look like?
I still get out there. There's certain days where I haven't, where it's just like things will stack up, like things will just happen, that you have to take care of or whatever. Like today we have an appointment. And so that's going to take probably 2.5 hours out of the day. It's like, all right, well, I might not make it into the gym today, but that's even a bad excuse for it, because even in the first week, I was like, I kind of want to set the tone. The first week we came home with myself, and it's like, I don't care if it's 15 minutes. I don't care if it's 20 minutes. I don't need to warm up. Like, I just need to go move. And like, I have the benefit, Jason, you have the benefit. Anybody who's been doing CrossFit long enough, and on the competitive side for sure, you can kind of look at a workout and say, I know how to approach this with zero warm up. Like, I can do this workout right now. I can walk in the gym, hit the clock and go, and I can do it safely. I can do it effectively and not, worry about hurting myself or going overboard or doing anything like that. And even with the little sleep, I think that has tremendous value to just keep on top of something and keep moving and keep yourself active like that. It's a de-stressor. It's all of those things that make the day feel just a little more accomplished when you go in there and work out. So there's definitely some days, obviously, that I haven't been in, but even when days when I know it's going to be tight, it's like, okay, you got 30 minutes. What can you do in 30 minutes? And I think that's a beautiful thing about the CrossFit methodology is like, you can have 30 minutes and get in a great workout that touches on all sorts of different aspects of fitness. And that makes you prepared for all the things we're talking about, Jay, protect, provide, and all those things. And even if you only have a short amount of time.
I forget where I read this or I heard it on a podcast, and I don't even know how much truth there is, but it kind of makes sense. Like you were talking before about how something in your mind just like switched, right? When you had the kids, and there's a lot, and it's kind of generally understood that there's a lot of hormonal changes that happen obviously with women when they give birth. Like there's a lot that goes on, and that's like very understood, but there's also like research that shows now that there's like very, very like significant hormonal changes that happen to us when we become dads. There's like a drop in testosterone, and all this is supposed to make you more empathetic, make you more nurturing, like make you lean into the things that like you were saying before, like was never a big part of you in the past, but like you just like, it felt natural once you had kids. But the flip side of that, and this was where I remember seeing it, was that it's also a very important time to continue working on your fitness for those exact same reasons, because the drop in a lot of the hormones that you're going to see that help you kind of lean into this dad stuff will also, if you all of a sudden stop sleeping as much, go sedentary, maybe you don't start working on your nutrition as much, like that's where this like, dad bod thing becomes a thing, because you have everything working against you overall. And then it's also easier to find the excuses to just, not do the things that you were doing before. So I appreciate hearing from you, which arguably, you're, 0 to 2, we were saying before, you have the most demand on you in these 2 weeks, that you're still finding the time to get something in, because like you said, 20, 30 minutes, we can all find 20, 30 minutes. I know that, you're probably fortunate enough like us that you have access to a gym, some equipment, but we talk about this all the time. Like you can put some stuff in a backpack, you can go for a ruck, you can do some push-ups, you can do some air squats. There's an infinite amount of ways that you can continue to move in these early weeks. So appreciate you sharing that, because I think it's so key, even in those like first couple of days after, to kind of get after it, find some time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Gabe, you're trying to do 100 days straight, right?
Yeah. So training 100 days straight as a new dad of 2 under 2, which again, the reason that I'm like kind of doing that and sharing it is, again, because, I think that you can find time for the things that you find important, but also it's been like a really fun, because my toddler is now, 16, 17 months old. The way that I'm helping with my wife having the newborn is I'm taking him everywhere. So he's coming with me to the gym, something we didn't do before. Like before, it was kind of like we would take turns working out and the other one would watch the kid. And it's been so fun to have him with me while I work out. Like, yes, he needs some attention sometimes, needs snacks, but just to like have that time with him has been awesome. So it's been fun to do and fun to share. All right, we are taking a quick break from the podcast to talk about what we have going on in the month of June at Train Hard. So one of the things that's become increasingly apparent with what Jason has going on with the Train Hard Men's Club and just all these conversations we've been having on the podcast is that while there are some obvious physical benefits to training hard and fitness, it pales in comparison to the mental health benefits of working out, of training, and doing that alongside other people. So for the month of June, we have this shoulder to shoulder campaign going on. And what that is our effort to bring awareness to the specific challenges that men are facing when it comes to mental health. We have some awesome guests on the podcast for the month of June. We're talking about this in the newsletter, and we have a patch for sale on the Train Hard shop where all proceeds from that patch, so all proceeds from this shoulder to shoulder Train Hard patch, are going to be donated to Movember, a nonprofit that we're super stoked to be working with because they're doing some great work. Again, also bringing awareness to the challenges, but actually putting out programs and taking action to help solve and provide solutions for suicide prevention, helping deal with anxiety, depression, all these things that are super beneficial to men. So if you want to participate in that, if you want to support that cause, we're super fired up about it. You can go on the Train Hard shop for that shoulder to shoulder patch. All proceeds are going to go to Movember, or you can just share this podcast, share the newsletter, help us continue to have this conversation. But let's get back to the show.
Yeah. Hey, Dan, I want to ask you, so, I really appreciate what you said, like, hey, you're going to be 48 when they're in 8, right? So my children are 13 and 10. So I get to see those parents, right? And I'm around parents who, dude, are super fit. Like, dude, they're the guys, right? And I'm around parents who it's not. And it's really, really evident. Like, it's really evident of those that allow themselves to kind of, it's funny because I know people who are older who are actually more engaged, more enthusiastic because they keep up with their fitness than people who are younger but don't keep up with it. So right. In this case, I guess the point I'm trying to make is like age is just like a number in some cases, especially when you're in like your 40s and 50s. As a parent, I think the age is just a number versus how well you take care of yourself, because I've seen it firsthand where the people that take care of themselves, dude, they're just younger at heart. It's really cool to hear where your mindset's at because I've seen it firsthand. So I appreciate that, man. And I know that your kids will as well. You're going to be the coach, dude. You're going to be the track coach.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I already have plans for like, we have a big open space in our backyard to be like a hybrid, like football field, baseball stadium kind of thing in the backyard, like a place they can hit golf balls or do whatever it is they want to do. You know what I mean? I had this thought this morning because, Chris Spieler, he made like a little dirt track in his backyard and in just the little space that he has. I'm like, man, I got to get Chris out here and help me make like some kind of dirt bike
little
track.
Pump track for the kids.
Yeah, exactly.
Dude, I want to ask, like, going back to the way you were brought up, I know that obviously faith is a huge part of your life. Mm-hmm. And I think we should get to that, but when it comes to like your parents, like, I guess, and like lessons learned and things that you're thinking about with Alex and how you guys approach the new children, like anything kind of stand out to you? We've been having a lot of really good conversations on this podcast lately with dads, men, people in general, and ways that they're kind of taking their lessons that they learned growing up and then either, taking that and like doing the opposite, saying, hey, that was really bad, I don't want to be that, or taking the good things and then leveling up on it. So how was your childhood and what are you taking from that?
Man, my childhood was amazing. My parents were awesome. They were huge. We were definitely like the family where you come home from school or whatever, and it's like, hey, go outside and don't come back until it's partially dark out, or don't come back until the street light turns on, or don't, you know what I mean? It was very much that kind of attitude. They gave us a lot of a long leash, like a lot of independence, a lot of ability to just go out and learn a lot of things on our own. I was fortunate too, because I had an older brother. So I had a partner in crime, just like they're going to have. So that's something I definitely want to instill in them. I want them to play rough. I want them to fall down. I want them to get bruises. I want them to get scrapes. I want them to, have those experiences that way. I don't want to coddle them or put them in like any kind of bubble wrap or anything like that. I know that my brother and I learned a lot just from those experiences of things to do and things not to do. My dad was very much a guy of like, obviously he would protect me from anything, but if I kept going for something, he was very much of like, all right, I'm gonna let you touch the stove kind of thing. Like, okay, like you need to learn what this is all about. So you can go ahead and learn, you know what I mean? I'm not saying he like put my hand on a hot burner, but
right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? But he wasn't afraid, neither was my mom, to let us fall hard and then understand the lesson and learn from there. So that's definitely something that both Alex and I, we've done a good job of like communicating, I think, before we had kids, of kind of our experiences and things that we want to do and not do. You know, we definitely don't want to be those overbearing parents that are forcing them into sports and forcing them into things that like we loved and we achieved. Like Alex was an All-American gymnast. She was, a national champion weightlifting, and like went to the CrossFit Games. And it's like, it could be very easy for us to try to drive them and push them into that and force that on them because we had so many great experiences from it and got a lot of success from it. I think it's easy for us to expect that from our children, but trying to come up with ways where, give as much exposure as possible. And then what they start to gravitate towards and what they enjoy and what they like and what they want to pursue, support that in the best way possible.
Dan, do you think that there's any difference though with like the time that we live now with kind of like that long leash stuff? Like I remember one thing that Jay, you mentioned on another podcast about like, when Ava's going to start driving and letting her go down to the beach together. Like, dude, I think some of this stuff is like easier said than done, right? Like, do you feel that it was just a different time back then to be like, hey, just come back when the street lights come on?
I ask myself that question a lot, because and I don't know if it's just a technology thing with like what we have today versus what we didn't have, because you didn't know what you didn't know back then.
Right. We see so much more of it, right?
Yeah. There weren't cell phones, there weren't trackers. So it just wasn't an option. You didn't think about it. You didn't worry about it because nobody worried about it. Like it just wasn't a thing that you could do. So, I mean, my brother and I and some of our friends from the neighborhood, we'd be, I don't know, a mile away from home, just riding our bikes or walking 1.5 miles out in the middle of the woods, jumping in creeks, jumping in and out of trees. Like if we're breaking an arm or something happens out there, it's a big deal. Like a kid is going to have to carry another kid to a house. You know what I mean? There's no phones, there's no lifeline, there's no any of that. But and I don't know. I'm sure that still exists today. It has to still exist on some level with a lot of kids. But take advantage of the tech for what it's good for, but I would say I'm not going to try to abuse it with my kids. If there's something where I can kind of monitor where they're at, like, of course, like I want to see if I can know where they're at and what they're doing or where they're going to be. Sure. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to let them go on their own and do their own thing and do all that. But I think that, more people are super hyper aware of, I don't want to call it the boogeyman, but of like, just bad things happening to kids getting kidnapped or just random things happening like that. That's always, first or forward facing in the news and those things happening, especially over the past like 5 years or so. And so, I see that and it definitely like sets off alarms in my head. And it's something that I want to protect my kids from in any way possible. And my parents did that with us. It was like, the rule was, sometimes my brother and I would walk home from school. We were close enough, or after like middle school track practice, I could walk back. It was probably about 1 mile, maybe just under, uphill both ways in the snow, obviously every day. But the rule was, you never get in a car with anybody. I don't care if it's Mike Clay, who is like Austin was one of my best friends growing up down the road. That was his dad. And we hung out as families together. We went on vacations together. Doesn't matter. You do not get in the car, even with him, or you don't take rides from literally anyone. That was like the big rule. That was something that was kind of instilled in us, and our parents did a great job of kind of educating us that way in terms of all those things. But I don't know. I'm gonna find out, right? I'd be more interested in hearing from you, Jason, because you're around other kids, you're around other parents, you're around other families who I'm sure everybody does everything a little bit different and has a philosophy on how they want to handle things. And you're in a very different area too, in California, where it's super populated, giant cities. I'm in a more rural area. So it definitely depends on the situation, but I'd be interested in hearing from you.
Yeah. I think by the way, you're speaking my language. When I was growing up, my parents were always like, hey, when the street lights turn on, you need to come back. And I remember, dude, being in elementary school or like 6th, 7th, 8th grade, I was racing BMX bikes a lot. And I'd be on my bike like miles away, man. And it was just like a no big deal. Like, hey, come back when the streetlights are on. And now I think back, and here's a real life situation. This morning, okay, Ava's like, hey, let's go for a walk. I was like, okay, cool. So we went for a walk. And then she's like, hey, can I go take out the neighbor's dog and go walk around the neighborhood for 20 minutes? And I'm like, ooh. I was like, I was like, I don't know. What did your mom say? She's like, Mom let me do it for 20 minutes yesterday on just this one street. And I'm like, ooh. And it was like, if you had asked me 10, whatever years ago, maybe I have a different perspective, but now when I'm actually in the moment and you're saying, okay, my daughter is X size with this neighborhood, like, and it's funny because we live in a great neighborhood, whatever. But yeah, I think, Dan, you bring up a really good point. And I think this is going to be something that people are going to have to struggle with, including myself, for a long term to come, like leaving kids home alone, letting them go places, walking by themselves. I think maybe 10, 20 years ago, you didn't have access to the information as quickly. Now, I wonder if because of access to information, everybody just thinks the world is just a terrible place, and they're scared of their own shadow. And I'm raising my own hand right now, right? Like saying, like, if this was 20 years ago and I didn't have access to finding out about all these people getting all these things done. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is like where I'm at right now, we do let the kids stay home alone for short periods of time if we're nearby together, but never really by themselves. And then we don't really let them, like, especially my daughter, like walk around town, like downtown's fine, but like not on the way down or whatever by themselves. But I want to acknowledge the fact I really appreciate what you said, is that what you said was like your parents were pretty low key, like, hey, go out, go do your thing, like mine were, gave you a leash, long leash. But the rule was don't ever get in anybody's car. And I think that because there was only one rule, you probably abided by that, because it's not like they were giving you 40 rules. You know what I mean? It's just simple. Hey, don't do this. They didn't say, hey, don't go, name the thing. Right. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Right. And I mean, they were very like, we weren't too young to like understand what danger meant and what, and my parents loved us. They took great care of us. So my brother and I, we loved our parents and we trusted them. And so like, they would explain the situation exactly what it was. Like, people will want to do you harm. People will try to take you from us. People will try to X, Y, and Z. Like, they laid it out as flat as it can be. And as that language can be scary for a kid to kind of understand, but that's kind of good. I want you to be wary of those situations. I want you to have a little bit of fear if something like that starts to unfold in front of you. And so you have the proper reaction to it. You know what I mean?
Oh, Gabe, did you have something on this, or I have a question about track?
No, not on this, but it was just making me think what you specifically said, Jay. And I'm experiencing this already. And Dan, I'm sure you will too, is it's good that we're like talking about this and we're like acknowledging it, but man, it's so much more difficult once like the rubber hits the road. And a funny example that I have is like, we're trying not to bubble wrap our kids. We're trying to do all the things that we're talking about. And I took Shay, so our toddler, to his first like gymnastics class, and they were going into this ball pit. And he was like super nervous about getting in, like didn't want to get in. All the other kids, like their parents are like, encouraging them to get in. And I was like, letting him not get in. And a mom looked at me and she was like, you just got to throw them in. And man, like I felt that in my soul, because in that moment, I was that parent. I was the parent that was like, like, it's all right. Like, you don't have to go, like you're uncomfortable. And it was funny because, and I joke about this with my wife all the time. I was like, that mom like scarred me at gymnastics class. Like I was starting to be that, because when you're actually there and you see your kid and he's like a little nervous, he's a little uncomfortable, you're like, trying to protect him, but I'm not doing him any favors by not just giving him something that's uncomfortable, but very safe and uncomfortable, right? Like there's a reason that they throw him into this ball pit in gymnastics, because they have to use all their muscles to kind of get out and struggle a little bit. And that's good. But that was just a recent example that I was thinking about, where if you would have asked me, what would you do in that scenario? I would have given you one answer, but I'm in the scenario and I did something different.
Yeah, it's like easier said. And I think this is a good thing just for everyone listening to just reflect on, is like, especially like, be careful how you judge others, right? Be careful because until you're in that moment, until you're in that situation, like you don't really understand the full gamut of what that person like has gone through, their background, and maybe they have their best intentions, but dude, it's just tough. It's tougher than it seems. And, speaking of tough, Dan, I can't think of many sports that are tougher than like wrestling, rowing. There's a lot of tough sports, but track is a tough sport. And you used to run the 400, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And hurdles too, right?
No, not hurdles.
Okay.
Just the sprints, and up to the 800 meters was about as far as I would go. That wasn't really my event, but yeah.
Dude, so up to 800 meters, I'd say like the nastiest distance is probably, what do you think is the nastiest distance in track?
800 meters and 400 meters, like quarter milers and half milers will have this argument nonstop. Like which one is honestly worse? You know what I mean? And I think it's the 400 because I've run both, right? But I wasn't super competitive at the 800, but it's the 400 is just so intense for so long. And it's nerve wracking because the amount of like feathering on the throttle you have to do for about the first 250 meters can make and break your race, right? Like you have to like run at that odd percentage of 97.4% max effort, you know, for your first bit to make sure you set yourself up well to finish strong. And like, if you go out too hard, your race is done. Like you'll just tie up, everyone pass you in the last 100 meters and that's it. So running the right race is, I think, a little bit more difficult in the 400. In the 800, that first lap it's just not as intense. I mean, it's still intense, it's still fast, but there's a little more wiggle room with like figuring out where your competitors are at, what's everybody doing in the race, all those different kind of things, which makes it hard in its own sense because of some of that. But the 400's just, it's so intense for so long, and it makes it really special if you're a quarter miler runner. Like you have that in common with other guys who run the 400 or girls who run the 400. Everybody knows, like you kind of like, oh yeah, I know what you've been.
Because you're Division I, right?
Yeah, small Division I. I went to Ohio University down in Athens, Ohio.
And so I'm curious, like, you know, you're running track, you're at the highest level in track for college athletics, and 400 is just nasty, dude. It's like, it's a lane, and it's like, just, that's it. I mean, there's a lot of similarities, obviously, to CrossFit, where it's what's in your control. It's you in this, and there's no team to rely on. There's nothing, right? I'm curious what mindset tools you incorporated over time that help you show up to a starting block. And was there a mantra you went through? Was there was there a mantra you went through before you took off on your race?
Yeah. There's a couple things, like, right. Like you touched on before, like I'm a faith-based guy. So especially when you're out there doing an individual event, it can be very easy to tie your performance to your self-worth. You know what I mean? And similar to, like, I would maybe say pitcher in baseball or something like that. Like you have to have a pretty short-term memory. Like if you have a bad race and things don't go well, you have to forget about it to be able to move on to the next week and kind of clean slate yourself. So not tying your total value to the performance was something that I would like practice and focus on in terms of competing. But then, one of the things I read a book, Carl Lewis wrote a book. I can't remember what the name of the book was, but his thing kind of stuck out to me, and it's something that I practice too, because with sprinting, especially when you're talking about hundredths of a second, are going to determine between first place and last place, potentially in the 100 meters for sure. You're talking tenths of a second in the quarter mile for sure, sometimes hundredths of a second. So it's the smallest minute detail that can cause you to lose, right? So if you get up onto the starting blocks and all you're thinking about is, man, I've got this weird feeling in my right foot that doesn't quite feel, or the wind is blowing a little bit, and the conditions or whatever, and you kind of get wrapped up in your head about all these external factors that really everybody has to deal with. So it's not just you, right? It's not just, basically I would step up onto the line or in the blocks and understand, like, hey, this is the best I'm going to feel today. I've prepared for this. I've trained for this. I'm as good as everybody out here, and I can win. Like, you have to convince yourself no matter what. There were always times where I raced some people where they were way faster than me, 100%. And I knew it, but there wasn't a single time that I didn't step up on the blocks. Well, there were times, but the best times and the best races where I was the most prepared were, I can win. I would tell myself I can win. I would, pump myself up and remind myself, this is the best I'm going to feel today. This is the best I can, this is the best I've prepared. This is how I feel today. This is the circumstances I have to race in, and let's go get it done. You know what I mean? But you're right. You're very exposed with track and field. You're just kind of out there alone doing your thing. Any of the teamwork is kind of done earlier in the week with the training with your teammates. But then it's just you and the track and your competitors out there in a stopwatch, which is part of what I love about it.
Man, you'll probably appreciate this, but I swam in college, D3, so nowhere near at the level, but I swam distance. And the funny thing was, like, the distance people are always like, you know, super envious of the sprinters because the sprinters get like shorter workouts and it looks like they're doing all the fun stuff. But I remember I did one workout with the sprinters and it was abysmal. And I was quickly like, I much rather do distance, because the thing that I can appreciate is there's just no room for error. So like in swimming the 800 meters and the mile, like you're just kind of like, it's either you put in the work or you didn't. Like you can mess up a flip turn, you can come out a little too hot, and you can course correct throughout the race and still do great. But when you're swimming something like the 50, the 100, kind of like similar time domains to what you're talking about, it's kind of like, you know, A, it's going to suck, but B, you also can't mess up at any point. So I can 100% appreciate that. And I remember that I definitely had a newfound respect once coach actually put me in to like spend some time with the sprinters. I was like, all right, I get it. I'll go back to doing my 400 repeats.
You touched on something that I think is good too, and that I want to highlight, is that that's the other thing, that when you're getting ready in the starting blocks, it's that acceptance that this is going to suck. Like it's what it is. You accept that this is a hard thing. I'm doing a hard thing. It's not like, you don't want to start thinking of how can I avoid the pain, you know, in the race. You really have to lean into the pain. You have to accept
I'm choosing
to hurt today, and I'm going to choose to hurt worse than everybody else around me. I am going to hurt more than they are because I want it more than they do. And if you don't have that mindset coming down the home stretch, especially in a heat that's super competitive, you know, guys are like right here, right? Like they're just side by side running down the last 100 meters or so a lot of times. And you can see people who might mentally check out right there. It's just like, you know, it's hurting so bad. This person is just a half an inch in front of me, or they're starting to creep on me. And you can call that, like, sometimes people call that closing the door on a competitor, right? You'll just like kind of get a little bit in front of them and pull that little like inch or 2 or 3 inches. And all of a sudden this person just goes away. Like they just it shuts down mentally, and they just can't like continue the race. So that understanding, that mental prep, and knowing like this is going to suck, like that's something that you have to get ingrained in your head to run the quarter mile. You just have to accept that.
Yeah. Chris Hinshaw used to call it breaking the band. I haven't heard the term closing the door, but now I might steal that. We call it breaking the band, is like when when you separate out, right? And you're no longer looking at the person in front as like keeping up. You're trying to let the guy behind you not pass you, right? But the person in the front has closed the door on those other competitors. They're no longer in the picture. You know, I took 2 things away. I actually wrote this down. The fact of choice and the best all feel. And I think that there's a really good translation to real life. You know, not many people are going to be running 400s who listen to this podcast in a collegiate setting anymore. And I think the takeaway that we can have for real life is that we're going to choose to go out and go do hard things. We're going to choose to go do the thing, the ruck, the workout, the sauna, you name it.
Have kids.
Have kids, right? For the benefits that we will receive from that. And I think something I'm thinking about is like the way you start your day, right? And if you start your day off with some type of movement, whatever, and granted, you know, Dan, you're in the super, super thick of it, but I'm confident you'll be on this train of like starting your day off, et cetera. Like starting your day off the best you're going to feel, dude, something about that's just like, when you walk up to the line and say, this is the best I'm going to feel today, it's like, man, imagine to feel the best and then to start your day that way. And it'll hopefully translate through the rest of your day, just like it would in your race. Anyways, those were 2 takeaways I had. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, I think it applies to that, you know, getting in a workout no matter what kind of thing, kind of attitude. Oh, I got 2 hours of sleep. Oh, I missed a meal. Oh, all I had was a protein shake. I didn't get enough water. Well, this is the best you're going to feel today. So that's just what it is. Like, go get it done. You know, this is the reality of the situation, but that doesn't mean you can't go accomplish something. You know what I mean? I don't have to feel perfect to go accomplish something, and that's okay. You know, this is the best I'm going to feel. Let's go get it done.
Those things aren't in your control, right? What's in your control is what you're going to do about it and actually get the work done. I know we're coming short on time because you got somewhere to be with the appointment, but the one thing I just wanted to kind of share my appreciation. And this is a conversation that I've had with Liz, our producer. And the reason I was asking you just how you can put into words, bringing it back to the beginning of the episode, how hard, but how amazing it's been, being in the thick of having twins, not having sleep and so forth, is one thing I feel like you hear a lot from parents, and it's unfortunate, is this whole like, oh, well, just wait until you have kids. Like, you're not going to sleep anymore. You're going to lose your social life, like all these things. There's these like offhand comments that I know Liz has gotten because we've talked about it. I know we got it when we were having kids, and it's always like the just wait. And things are going to, yes, they're going to be hard, but I appreciate people just bringing more light to the positive side of it and how that like incredibly outweighs no matter how hard this whole parenting thing is. So coming from you, just having twins, like, arguably maybe one of the toughest intros to, becoming a dad. I really appreciate hearing that. And I know that people out there will as well. So I just wanted to thank you for that.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say too, one of the coolest things that no matter what time we go in there to feed or take care of them or see what's up if they just won't stop screaming is some things that people have like drilled into my head right now are like, hey, enjoy every stage, because once that stage is done, it's done. You're never getting it back. Like that's it. And even in this stage, as hard as it is, right now, Alex and I, we're the only things they want. That's it. They just want us. They just want to be held and taken care of by us. They don't want a computer. They don't want their friend. They don't want some game. They don't want anything. They just want you. And leaning into that moment, and like when I can grab them and they're crying and sometimes just lay back and you put them on your chest and they just get quiet immediately. Oh, that's fantastic. Like knowing that they need me that bad, that they want you that bad. And that you can provide that comfort to your child is, that's a feeling that obviously I never experienced, and it's fantastic. So as hard as like all this is right now, like those little moments, even when you're exhausted and you're like, I just want to sleep and I don't want to have my ear screamed off, when those little things, they still happen, it's like, you just get a big smile on your face and you're like, yeah, all right. Yeah, this is worth it. This is perfect. Like, I love this. Yeah.
Oh, I fucking love it.
Yeah. Dude, Dan, you're like, if you're not watching this on video, Dan's like glowing right now. People say like, oh, you have a new, like a glow to you. You have a glow to you, man.
Nobody was given such a hard time for not being married or having kids than I have been. So like, I am so fired up about this. Like, I'm so proud.
Yes.
I'm married just the most wonderful woman on planet Earth. She's an amazing wife and human being. And now we have one boy, one girl, twins. Like, wow. Like I hope I'm glowing every day because of that. It's fantastic.
I think I want to be sensitive to your time because I know you have an appointment for the twins, but I do think that a conversation, I'd love to have you back on the show and talk very specifically about what role faith plays, and especially as within the relationship with your wife and the relationship with your children. We just had a gentleman on the show, and he was recommending for people who want to, dive into the Bible, that it does feel like a big barrier. Like and you and I have had multiple messages of this over the years. Right. Yeah. And he was recommending to dive in with just listen to a different proverb every day. Just to kind of get your feet wet type of thing. I really want to dive into that. So hopefully we can have you back and we could just lean into this, because it seems like, and I imagine so, like, you feel like this was God's plan for you. Like, is that the way you feel? Like, right. And I want to know, like, dude, if this was God's plan, like, how did we get here? And like, talk to me more about that. Cause I just think it's something that I'm really connecting to right now. And I'd love to hear more about it.
No, I'd love that. Yeah. I'd love that. Absolutely. That'd be great.
Well, Gabe, Dan, we really appreciate it. We will make sure, I'm sure the best place for people to keep up with you, we could link your Instagram. We could link your training programs below. But we just want to, say we appreciate you. We are so happy for you. And dude, you exude what it feels like for me to be a good dad, right? Someone who comes and expresses their gratitude, but also like their mindset towards it. So thank you very much. Gabe, any kind of final thoughts there?
No, man, this has been awesome. Can't wait to have you back.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me on. This was great. I really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed talking to you guys and hearing from both of you as veteran dads.
Yeah, veterans, I get. Yeah. Well, on that note,
More veteran than me.
Yeah, we appreciate you guys listening to the episode. Simple ask, if you've gotten value from this conversation, just share with a friend and leave us a review on the podcast. It definitely helps us out, helps to grow the message and make a bigger impact, and keep training hard.